The Babylon Project was our last best hope for Scott. A self-contained podcast, 1 hour long, located on the internet. A place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere. A shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcasts. The year is 2014. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, Babylon 5 fans. This is Raul and Jim with another episode of the Babylon Project podcast. Or maybe I should say a continuing episode of the Babylon Project podcast, right, Jim?
Yes, it's part 2, A Voice in the Wilderness, part 2.
Yep. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing well. We're getting right down to the end of the first semester, and I'm looking forward to 2 weeks of vacation.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yes.
Now, we've got someone with us tonight, correct?
Yes. I would like to introduce J.P. Harvey, retired colonel from the United States Air Force, who has agreed to come aboard and be our military consultant. How you doing,
Hello,
J.P.?
Gentlemen.
How you doing,
Great.
JP?
Life is good.
Yep, and this is the perfect episode to have you, or at least one of several perfect episodes to have you on with us, because it takes a distinct military twist from the last part of this, or the first part of this episode.
Great. I'm happy to help where I can.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Well, this is the second part of what is one of the fans' favorite episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I think our best bet, Jim, is to go ahead and get you straight into a summary for us.
Hit it, Maestro.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
This episode picks up at the moment that A Voice in the Wilderness Part 1 leaves off. The ship that comes through the jumpgate is the Earth Force heavy cruiser Hyperion. The Hyperion's commander, Captain Pierce, contacts the station and announces that he is taking command of the situation. Dr. Franklin ministers to the needs of the alien that was brought back from Epsilon 3. After Sinclair checks on the alien's condition, Sinclair returns to his office and meets with Pierce over the communications link. Pierce informs Sinclair that he has been sent by the Office of Planetary Security to assure that any new and revolutionary technology is secured by study for Earth Force. Sinclair tells Pierce that his presence will make an already bad situation worse. Sinclair contacts Senator Hidoshi to help him get Pierce to stand down. He tells him that he has been given authority over the entire sector by President Santiago, and he refuses to relinquish command unless ordered to do so by the president. At first, Hidoshi appears unsympathetic, but agrees to do what he can after Sinclair threatens to resign. Sinclair is then called to CNC by Ivanova. Upon arriving in CNC, Ivana informs Sinclair that Star Furies have launched from Hyperion and are coming under attack from the planetary defense. Sinclair contacts Pierce and tells him that his fighters will not be able to get through because he doesn't have a jamming device that disables the defense systems. Pierce recalls his fighters, swallowing Sinclair's bluff. Sinclair also learns that the seismic activity on the planet has escalated and is threatening to destroy the planet and the station. Sinclair orders that plans should be made to evacuate the station. Londo, who has been trying to get information, approaches Ivanova and questions her. She gives him the brush off and resumes her duties. As Delenn and Draal continue their tour of the station, Draal is contacted by Varn, the alien from Epsilon 3. They head to MedLab, where Franklin informs Draal that it is impossible for Varn to have contacted him because he is in a coma. Suddenly, Varn awakens and tells them that no one will be able to approach the planet unless they bring the other. Sinclair learns that Varn has awakened, and at the same time a very large alien ship arrives through the jumpgate and shoots a scanning beam at both the station and the Hyperion. The beams are scanning the language databases, and soon an alien that is of the same race as Varn contacts Sinclair, informing him that they have been searching for Epsilon 3 for 5 centuries and that they will be taking over. They give everyone 10 hours to leave the sector. Pierce breaks in and tells the aliens that they have 9 hours to leave or they will be attacked. Sinclair visits Varn in MedLab. Varn explains that the newcomers were cast out and that he has been the guardian of the machine for the past 500 years. He insists that the outcasts must not be allowed to reach the planet, and also that the planet will destroy itself unless a replacement guardian is installed soon. Franklin tells Sinclair that Varn is indeed dying, which resulted in the seismic disturbances. Sinclair approaches Delenn and Draal and learns that Varn had also contacted Draal. Pierce then contacts Sinclair and tells him that the Hyperion and the station are both being jammed by the alien ship and proposes a joint strike on the alien. Sinclair agrees and they prepare for a fight. Londo tells Delenn and Draal that he was also contacted by Varn and agrees to help them, knowing that one of them will not return. After being cleared for launch, Londo, Delenn, Draal, and Varn head for the planet while the battle begins around them. The planetary defense system doesn't fire and allows the Centauri shuttle through. Garibaldi takes another shuttle in pursuit of Londo and the rest. Upon reaching the place where Varn was found, everyone assembles and Draal informs them that he will become the guardian of the machine. Garibaldi protests, but has to accept because Draal is determined to follow through, believing it is his destiny. Meanwhile, the battle for Epsilon 3 rages above. The alien ship has split into 3 separate ships, and the station seems to be losing. Suddenly, a giant energy burst erupts from the planet, and Draal appears in the form of a hologram to Sinclair. Draal explains that he is now the guardian and that the planet belongs to no one. He further says that any ship that approaches a station will be destroyed. Ignoring this warning, the alien ship's 3 components head towards the planet and are destroyed by an energy beam that comes from Epsilon 3. On the planet, Delenn says her goodbyes to Draal. Varn explains that Draal will experience the wonders of the universe and that he will watch over Draal during the time that he has left to him. Garibaldi, Delenn, and Londo leave to return to the station. As the Hyperion makes ready to depart, Captain Pierce contacts Sinclair and apologizes for exceeding his bounds. While Garibaldi watches an ISN report in a Zocalo cafe about the unrest on Mars and how President Santiago is taking measures to end it, another patron suggests that a nuclear solution to the problem might be good. Garibaldi loses his temper and becomes violent with the mouthy patron. Later, after hearing about what happened, Sinclair visits with Garibaldi, who admits that he was wrong in the way he reacted, but he is so frustrated about the news from his home, along with not being able to get any information about Lise. Sinclair says that he will call in some favors and try to get Garibaldi through. After the battle, Sinclair tells Garibaldi that he has a channel to talk directly to Lise. When Garibaldi talks to her, he learns that she has been wounded, but not severely, and is recovering in a hospital. Garibaldi admits that he regrets the way they parted when he was last on Mars, and that he would like to return to see her. Lise informs him that she is now married. Satisfied that she is at least safe, Garibaldi wishes her well and rings off. The episode ends with Garibaldi on the observation deck gazing at the stars. He is joined by Delenn. Garibaldi asks Delenn why she didn't inform everyone that she knew that Draal was to become the guardian of the machine. She tells him that she knows that if she had, Sinclair would have insisted that he become the guardian because he is searching for a purpose in life. She further says that she could not allow Sinclair to make this sacrifice because his destiny lies elsewhere.
Character files opened.
Thank you again, Jim. That gives us a good basis of where to start.
Okay.
I guess the first thing we want to think about is our guest stars.
Right.
Now, we've got all of the old guest stars from last week, plus Senator
Correct.
Hidoshi, who we've talked about before. But we've got a couple new people that we want to mention.
Right.
Who is our first?
Our first one is Ron Canada as Captain Ellis Pierce.
Uh-huh.
On IMDb, he has a very long list of credits dating all the way back to 1983. Not a great deal of science fiction work. A couple of notable ones, though. Star Trek The Next Generation. He was in the Masterpiece Society along with John Snyder, who, as you probably recall, played Orin Zento and Soul Hunter number 2 in previous episodes of Babylon 5.
Right.
Yeah, he also appeared in Deep Space Nine, the episode Rules of Engagement, and also in Voyager, an episode called Juggernaut.
Uh-huh. And he was in X-Files. He has been in National Treasure. He has been in West Wing, Gothic, the video game, Stargate. Wow. Numbers, if you remember that show. And still very active today from the looks of it.
Yeah.
Grimm, just the 2014 season of Grimm.
So, yeah, as I said, a long list of credits.
And it looks like he goes all over the place in style.
We also had Denise Gentile as Lise Hampton, who appears in a video contact in this episode. She guest starred in a total of 9 episodes of Babylon 5, all as Lise. She's been in Quantum Leap, and a particular film that I really kind of enjoyed. I read all the books I could find on it, but she was played a small part in a movie called Family of Spies, which was about John Walker and his family spy ring. John Walker just passed away a couple of months ago.
Okay. That might be something to add to my watch list.
Yeah, still in prison. Family of Spies. Wow, the book was incredible. The movie was okay. And I'm looking at it on the shelf right over there right now. So.
Now, what's interesting about her role as Lise Hampton is that she comes in about 9 episodes.
Right.
But those 9 episodes are scattered throughout the run of the series.
Yeah.
And it was amazing that they were able to get her back repeatedly, for each of those different roles.
Oh, yeah.
Or each of those different appearances.
Well, see, and I'm wondering if it isn't the same situation as it was perhaps with Maggie, as far as the ISN news anchor was concerned.
I don't know. Or like Walter Koenig with Chekhov. Of course, if it's a character that they really need, if they can adjust the filming order to bring that character in. But
oh yeah,
it's still, for me at least, an amazing feat to be able to bring her back. over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Initiating plot analysis.
We left Voice in the Wilderness Part 1 with Garibaldi wondering what was it actually what the hell exactly the final line of the scene?
I don't remember.
I know that was the look he sure had on his face, but something big was coming through.
Yeah, something completely unexpected.
Yep, we get Earth Alliance heavy cruiser Hyperion.
Yes.
Coming through the jump gate.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming control.
Yeah.
So he says.
And that's his, the commander of the Hyperion just jumps in and says, I'm taking over this situation. Of course, Garibaldi is in the control center. And
for some bizarre reason.
He's a chief, so he's a non-commissioned officer, and he really doesn't have any authority to say anything either way.
All right, JP, my first question for you, in the military consultant side, and frankly, just feel free to hop in throughout the conversation on anything. But the way Captain Pierce just pops in and assumes control of the situation, hey, I'm here, I'm in charge, lump it. That kind of struck me as a little bit, is someone going to come in and just blow in and make that kind of blanket claim without anything to back it up?
Right. So this caught my attention too, watching the show. That would be very unusual for two officers that are commanding at the level that these guys do. It's conceivable, and as I recall, Pierce makes an excuse to Sinclair, or suggests that he kind of got this right as he was coming out of hyperspace, as I recall. And I want to tie that in with another comment that the senator makes when we talk about him. But the suggestion is, or the impression is, this is fast unfolding and there wasn't a lot of time and I got this order and so here I am. But that would be highly unusual, comparing that to the real world based on the purest definition of a chain of command.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that gets to just another point that apparently in this whole initial sequence of scenes with Pierce, it's the Office of Planetary Security that put them in charge, which sort of seems outside the military chain of command.
Right. That's an unknown for me. And I heard that title, and that sounds like an executive branch office. If we're going to use our executive branch today, the U.S. political system and the branches of government, Congress doesn't typically have entities called offices like that. That sounds like an executive branch function.
This almost sounds like a TSA officer coming in and taking charge of a military command.
Right. So you can have, just like in the military here in the United States, you have the Department of Defense, and that rolls up under the president, and then you could have an entity, say, like TSA or the Department of Homeland Security, and it also rolls up underneath the executive branch, but they're separate entities, and it would be odd to have this other activity that is not Earth Force roll in and say, go take command. Now, what I don't know, what I couldn't find is, elsewhere in the series, is this same office mentioned, and is it in fact a part of the broader, the umbrella organization Earth Force? We just don't know that in this episode.
Right, and I don't think it's mentioned elsewhere.
What if we looked at it as possibly something akin to our Homeland Security?
Yeah, well, remember, the government's going to have a bit of a shakeup. So new offices forming, old offices disappearing, as it were. going along with what JP said, one of the things that actually is an issue of this particular episode is that Sinclair has some problems with how the orders came down through the chain of command as well.
Right.
In fact, that proves to be a plot point.
The other play here that causes some tension, Sinclair appears to be akin to a military governor.
Right.
So he is a military officer. He's functioning in that capacity, but he's Babylon 5 is something that's not quite the same as, say, the heavy cruiser, the warship that comes in with Captain Pierce in command. This is probably much more of a diplomatic entity that happens to be administered by a military officer. And as you know, Sinclair says, my orders came directly from the president. That's a very ambassadorial construct that he's laid out there. Ambassadors are the direct representatives of the president, and so his authority comes directly from there. Now, the military chain of command also comes from the president as well as the commander-in-chief. So it's back to Pierce showing up and saying, I was told to come here and take over. It's an oddity because somebody who has the authority to make that scale of a decision and give that kind of order, probably the president, should have communicated the same thing to Babylon 5.
Okay, but we do have a different president now.
No, not yet. It's still Santiago.
Oh, okay.
But one thing to go along with what JP said is that's more or less clarified at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clarified along the lines that JP indicates.
Okay.
Now, this almost segues to one of the other big questions that I had in my notes. Captain Pierce. Now, if you look at his rank insignia on his chest, it's the same gold bar that Commander Sinclair has. Now, we also know that this is just a heavy cruiser. It's one of the few remaining classes of that ship that survived the Earth Minbari War.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely not the larger capital ships like the Agamemnon, the destroyer class, or what we see later, the Warlock class. Is Captain Pierce the captain of the ship captain, or is he rank captain? It kind of becomes the question. And one of the reasons that I'm kind of wondering that is if he was an actual captain by rank, even if Sinclair was the military governor of the station, would he be able to get away with talking down to him? And at the end of the conversation, Sinclair summarily dismissed Pierce. I wouldn't think you would be able to get away with that if Pierce was actually a superior officer.
Sure. I hadn't noticed the rank insignia. I assumed that Pierce is not only the captain of the ship, but is also a captain using the naval rank construct.
Mm-hmm.
He's an 06. He's equivalent to a colonel in the Army, for example, and commanding this large ship. For folks who aren't familiar, the commander of a naval vessel is called captain positionally. Whether they're actually a captain or they may be a commander or a lieutenant commander or what have you. So in this case, my assumption was that Pierce is a captain in rank as well as the captain of the ship. Sinclair, being a commander, is essentially the captain of the station, though, too. So if their ranks are different, if Pierce is a captain and Sinclair is a commander, Pierce outranks Sinclair, but positionally they're peers in that Sinclair has command of the station, Babylon 5, and ultimately has authority there to run the station in the same way that Pierce is the captain of the warship and has the authority to run that ship.
Mm-hmm.
Another example I can give as an aviator is when we would fly the aircraft that I used to fly, we'd have two pilots and a crew in the back. The pilot in command, the aircraft commander, could be in rank junior to the co-pilot in certain scenarios, but as the aircraft commander is in charge of the aircraft. So the rank is important, but the position in some context is more important.
Okay.
When Sinclair dismisses Pierce, basically tells him to have a nice day, and I hope you enjoy your stay, or I'll make your stay as comfortable as possible. Whatever he says,
as short as possible.
He defers to Sinclair, when Pierce defers to Sinclair, that suggests to me as a viewer that Pierce understands on the station Sinclair's got the authority. In fact, in the district or the region, I think Sinclair used the term region, he has the authority.
Okay, that clears it up a lot for me. Thanks.
That doesn't undo obviously when a guy comes in and says, I was ordered to take over, that's still on the table.
Right. And still entirely up in question because, Sinclair's questioning it, and as you said yourself, it's unusual.
Well, I would have thought, at least procedurally, that if this was going to happen, Sinclair would have been informed.
Right.
Okay, Captain Pierce is on his way with the Hyperion, and he will be taking charge of this situation.
Right.
Yeah, hyperviolet communication.
Yeah, some ranking officer would inform Sinclair of the intentions there.
If he's acting in, this is Sinclair, if he's acting in an ambassadorial capacity, even though he's not an ambassador on the station, or at least he doesn't go by that title, it's safe to take as a fact that he works directly for the president. To not have a communication from the president or the vice president or somebody appropriately inside of that ambassadorial chain of authority, he's completely correct to resist this guy coming in and saying, I've been sent here to take over.
And, another thing, too, is deferring to Sinclair, who knows what the situation is. He knows the planet is having difficulties. They've sent ships down to check things out. He's been down himself to check things out. He knows the situation far better than Pierce would ever have a chance to know.
And Pierce doesn't seem to care.
Respect that.
Yeah. Well, he has his orders, and as far as he's concerned, he's in the right. And perhaps this is a demonstration of maybe a lack of knowledge of military procedures.
Could be.
Or just a plot device. Yeah.
Well, like I said, we're going to find out that the orders didn't come through the proper chain of command at the end, after it's all too late, as we'll find out. But
right. Now we switch to Garibaldi, who is sitting in the bar,
drinking his water,
having a drink of water, and some loudmouths pipe up nearby.
Yeah, he doesn't really care for the anti-Mars attitudes there.
Yeah, and we should probably say that there is unrest on Mars, a great deal of unrest on Mars, and there's been no communication, and Garibaldi has a person that he cares a great deal about that he knows nothing about of what's going on Mars.
Right. He still hasn't gotten anything real information about Lise.
Right. Yeah, this one guy starts spouting off about throwing nuclear weapons around and things like this, and thinking that, it'd be really funny for something like that to happen. And Garibaldi uses a little magic on him.
A little magic trick, yeah. Doesn't quite... The trick doesn't quite work. I think he needs to do a little more practice, because I thought the idea was the guy's head was supposed to go through the table, not stop at the table.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it looked, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
But, as I watched this scene, I was very uncomfortable. I thought Garibaldi was really very heavy-handed here, overreacting, unprofessional, and definitely not endearing himself to anybody on the station or anybody who witnessed this.
I wasn't as uncomfortable, but I wouldn't disagree in the least.
Yeah,
he was definitely a little heavy-handed.
Yeah,
actually, definitely a lot heavy-handed. He's rather lucky he didn't get in a heck of a lot more trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I rather expect an MP doing that today would end up with a little bit of brig time.
Oh, no doubt.
And the Garibaldi piece with Mars really isn't. It's almost a sideline from the main story here. I mean, it really is a B story in this case, because the important part of what's happening is almost an afterthought. Oh, and by the way, the alien they found on Epsilon 3 is now a patient in med lab.
Yeah. So at any rate, we have Hidoshi. Sinclair contacts Senator Hidoshi for help.
Of no use, of course.
Yeah. Which isn't, in light of what JP's been telling us, Hidoshi has no authority here anyway.
Yeah, JP, this kind of brings up...
Right.
If you've been listening to the show for any time, you've heard me complain about Hidoshi. The idea of a military governor answering to the senator as senator and getting most of his guidance from a senator like that just has always struck me as a little odd, a little out of place.
It is.
Even as a Babylon 5 fan who's seen the entire series, it strikes me as out of place.
Right. It caught me as odd, and as a viewer, I just accepted that this was somehow an appropriate phone call for him to make. Now, one thing it may suggest to us is that this, the office, I'm drawing a blank on the name, the Office of Planetary Security, maybe it's not quite the same as what I had described earlier. We said, well, it could be an office under the executive branch, under the president. It is a little bit odd that he calls a senator, but it's presented to us as viewers as if this is normal. So I just sort of took it at face value. What caught my attention was what happened inside the dialogue.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, Sinclair obviously says, "Look, I'll resign over this if it comes to that. I don't want to." That's a pretty heavy conversation to have with the senator, and he's asking for help, and the senator says, "Well, the president is busy," or something to that effect.
And you're getting to one of my pieces. Obviously, there's typically a commander isn't going to have direct access to the President of the United States. But considering Sinclair's authority is direct from the President, and this is a military governorship, you would think he would have some ability to appeal directly to the President, or at least to the Joint Chiefs.
Right. So the Joint Chiefs today in our world are advisors to the President, to the National Command Authority. They're not in the chain of command, but they could make an appeal based on being the advisors, the military advisors that would back up a commander in the field, say like Sinclair.
Okay.
Can you ever conceive of a situation, though, where the commander of a base would contact a senator for any reason to appeal a situation like this?
It would be extremely unusual or improper, with the exception of Sinclair acting. In my head, I treat him like he's an ambassador.
Okay.
Right.
And as an ambassador, even though we don't call him that, we don't see him called that in the show, it would be appropriate for him on an issue related to command or his authority to go to the president. Not day-to-day administration.
Right. He wouldn't go through the legislature.
No, not normally. So I don't know in this case if it's we're watching storytelling happen. This is the way the story's told, and we can just accept it that way, or in part or in whole, we're being set up for a bigger plot point down the road.
Yeah.
And I think it's the latter. Having seen the series, I think it's the latter, because when we have Sheridan in command, we start seeing the kind of relationships and interactions that you've been describing as what would be appropriate.
Right. Now, the other piece of this could be, in the absence of any other way to get a hold of the folks that Sinclair would normally get hold of, he appeals to somebody that he knows, somebody that he's worked with, say in the funding or the equipping of the station. Again, if the setup in the show is comparable to what we have today, the money is controlled by Congress, that maybe he reaches out to somebody else in the government at a senior level to say, I need your help. But it's not a command issue. The senator can't roll in and tell the other military commander to back off. But the senator may be able to get to the president in a way that Sinclair can't, since he's on Babylon 5.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't know that that's the case, but that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving the story along, we have Pierce sending down ships to Epsilon 3 without notifying Sinclair or anyone else of what was going on. And how do I put it? Epsilon 3 gets a little cranky with all the attention.
Right.
Yeah.
The planet is riddled with 10-mile wide fusion reactors. Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of power there for sure. Yeah, Pierce unilaterally decides to take his imagined authority to the maximum. Pretty scary.
Yeah. In my notes, I'm not very polite about it. Mm-hmm. I just flat out, it's like facepalm, Pierce is an idiot. JP, this is another question for you since it's like, yeah, I know people I know people will try to execute their orders, but do people that just pursue something that inanely blind actually make it in the military? Or can you even answer that question?
Certainly there's people at every level that you might scratch your head quietly in a room and say, how did this person make that rank? Or get into that position.
Okay.
But in this case, looking at the characters as they're presented, somebody appears to have told Pierce to go and take over and to get this mission done, which he explained was to secure the stuff that he or others believe belong to Earth. Earth first. Mm-hmm. He is either reckless. I said it. I said those two words.
No. You just popped an idea. Go ahead with what you were saying, though.
He may or may not fully appreciate what's happening on the surface. He may not care. I was given my orders. He believes his orders are legitimate, and I'm not going to fight you over the station, but I'm going to get done what I need to do on the surface. So he sends the ships down. He doesn't coordinate with Sinclair because, as far as he's concerned, it's not his business. Now, if he fully appreciates what's happening on the planet, he's pretty reckless.
Well, yeah.
I just had a thought, and okay, JP, I understand we are comfortable with spoilers here. Jim, JP, yeah. I wonder if Pierce knows or knows somebody who does know Clark.
Well, yeah, of course, Clark is vice president.
But think about it in the context that I'm
with you. Yeah.
Referring. Clark is going hog wild any price to gather advanced alien technology.
Well, of course.
We find out later in the series that Clark knows at least some of the big picture. You know, in an episode or two, Delenn's going to ask Kosh a question. Clark already knows the answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and as JP pointed out in his remarks, that this is about as far as Pierce is concerned, securing the tech that may possibly be on the planet, which is considerable.
Let's just say I have a feeling that Pierce and Sheridan wouldn't be on the same side of any sort of conversations.
Well, no, because Sheridan's... Not Sheridan, but yeah, I see where you're
I'm saying
coming
Sheridan specifically. You see where I'm coming from here?
Yes.
Is Pierce a Clark operative?
That's the question I didn't throw out there. Is who really gave him his orders?
Yeah, okay, good. You're seeing the same. Because if Pierce is a Clark operative, that would sure explain a heck of a lot as far as bypassing chains of command, some of the attitude, some of the disregard of safety, some of, as JP put it, the recklessness. It really brings a lot of it into context.
Well, it's a valid question, and it would really be neat to get a hold of JMS and ask him this. If this is something...
Hey, Joe Straczynski.
That was
this
in mind.
This is Raul from the Babylon Project podcast. If you are ever listening to this show, we've got some questions for you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
It just would make it sense. And, in all this recklessness, Jim, you've got some more Russian pessimism.
Oh, I know. Here we go again. I'll tell you what. We are on, in the season, show number 19, and I believe we have heard Ivanova point out that she is Russian about 17 times. I'm going to have to count that. But...
Oh, gosh.
Okay, Susan, we know you are of Russian descent, okay? Enough. Thank you. That's my mini rant for the night. But, now at the same time, while she's mentioning this, Sinclair wants to prepare to evacuate 250,000 beings from the station to protect them from whatever may happen with the planet. Where is he going to put all these people, and how does he intend to get them there? Do they have...
He's not going to get everyone off.
Do they have trailers they hook up to the Star Furies, and how are we going to get all these people off the station?
At one point, don't they?
Frankly, you're not.
Doesn't Sinclair say we'll never get everybody off, or something to that effect? And but then you do the best you can.
I thought so.
Yeah, there's just the time factor.
Yeah, you commandeer every ship you can, and you get
as far away as you can.
You have to make some hard decisions. The most important people off, and hopefully you can get them out of the blast radius.
Well, this could be the Titanic of that era, because they're not going to get but a very small percentage of people off this station.
Right.
I mean, what, 100? 200 people, maybe?
Yeah. Let's face it, even if the station did have some sort of life craft, the most likely place you would want to evacuate to would be, Epsilon 3.
Yeah.
That's not going to work very well.
No, that won't work. So, yeah.
Susan does do a good job handling Londo. Just to get back into your good graces, Jim.
Yeah.
Because Londo's suspicious and he's wanting his answers.
Yeah. Which is really weird for this show now that I think of it, because Londo has all the answers before everybody else does normally, and this time he doesn't know. So at least somebody didn't leak.
Yep. Well, Susan tells him. In fact, we'll let Susan. No one says boom like Susan does, so we'll let her say it herself.
Yes.
Ah, Lieutenant Commander, just the person I've been looking for.
Ambassador, this is not a good time.
No, I imagine not. You have been holding out on me.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Situation is status quo.
Of course. An Earth war cruiser parked alongside the station. Mysterious trips to the planet beneath us. Rumors that you have found someone down there and brought him back here. This to you is status quo, yes? You must lead a very interesting life.
Ambassador.
You did find something down there, didn't you? Something valuable, perhaps? I wish to remind you that my government has contributed substantial amounts of money to this station. We are entitled to an equal share of anything you find down there.
Ambassador, do you really want to know what's going on down there right now?
Yes, absolutely. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom.
Have a nice day.
You can never get a straight answer from anyone around here.
Well, I will say this. She was telling the truth.
Yes, just nothing but
Now-
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, not one word out of her mouth was false.
No. But she still doesn't tell him anything.
Nope. But we do now have Varn calling to Draal, and he's doing it by name at this point, which hadn't happened for Londo or Sinclair.
Right. And appearing as a hologram, too. That's a pretty good trick.
It's going to be useful.
You think perhaps Varn didn't program this to happen before he was brought to Babylon 5?
I don't know. I hadn't given that a lot of thought, but yeah, it was Draal by name, and I think you've got good because he's not in the machine to use it. But of course, we know you don't have to be in the machine to use the holographic projection. Sheridan does that in season 3.
But we don't know that yet.
But the fact that he's calling Draal by name. I think he had already at this point kind of made his decision on who it should be, though he hasn't passed it along to anyone yet. So that's a point worth considering, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, we might as well get over it. We short detour back to Mars. Mike is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
Jeff's trying to help.
Right. And, Garibaldi is behaving very unprofessionally, okay, which is, I guess, is understandable to a certain extent. But when you take into consideration what is happening outside the station and with the planet, and here comes Sinclair to sit down and handhold his chief of security, okay, and punch his TS ticket, it's kind of ridiculous. I think if I had been Sinclair, if I had been in his situation, I'd have sat down and said, look, bub, pull your socks up, wipe your nose, and get your butt back to work.
Have you seen The Incredibles, either of you?
I have.
Edna Mode.
It's been on TV, but I don't really...
Edna Mode walking across the table and smacking Elastigirl back and forth with her little rolled up newspaper.
Yeah.
Pull your act together.
Well, yeah, and
remember who you are.
I mean, Picard did that a number of times in Next Generation. He went to Worf and he said, if your personal life is going to get in the way of doing your job, then maybe you should resign, which is what I would expect a commander to do.
Especially when you're hours away from mass rioting, when the word gets out.
Well, okay, here it is. We've got a guy coming in trying to take over in Sinclair's bailiwick. We've got a planet that is getting ready to fall to pieces. We've got holographic dudes running around talking to everybody on the station. We got Ivanova, who's worried about her heritage again. We've got all this stuff going on, and Garibaldi wants to sit there and boo-hoo-hoo over his girlfriend. Now, JP.
That he walked out on.
You are commanding and your chief of security is acting like Garibaldi, what are you going to do to this guy?
Well, probably more. I would pull him aside and have him get his head back in the game. This is another part of the story that I just accepted for the reasons that you described, Jim. There's so much going on. Unless he's afraid that Garibaldi will become ineffective, granted he bounced the guy's head off the table, and now we've got this issue. But unless he's going to become ineffective, I'll deal with him later. But given the time, I would probably yank him aside and say, what are you doing? Where's your head?
Yeah, this is DEFCON 2 for crying out loud. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Of course, we really don't see Garibaldi in a position of doing his job because that it's sort of sidetracked behind the main military story. So
yeah, well,
we don't necessarily know how ineffective he's been, but I agree with you. It sure gives that appearance.
Requiring his commanding officer to sit down and console him is bad enough. Okay. He wants Garibaldi to make sure Susan gets off the station. Now, if Susan doesn't want to get off the station, okay,
yeah,
I would really like to see anybody try to make her.
She won't go if she doesn't want to go.
No.
Tranquilizer gun and a lot of rope.
You better have about a gallon of ketamine on board then. Because she's not going to go without a fight.
Yeah.
If something happens to Sinclair, she is the commanding officer.
Yep.
So, but I just think that would be something to see.
I don't know what the contingent that leaves the station looks like if that happens, but I don't know if that's a part of the logic. Sinclair's going to go down with the ship, so Ivanova needs to go with whoever isn't going to go down with the ship, and that may be a minority, but
you do need a senior
the commander
officer
of that detachment, that group that's going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she'd fight it, but if you put it in those terms, you'd probably be able to get her to go
right,
at least unwillingly.
Yeah.
Back to what I consider the more interesting story. We've had the alien. We know his name is. Well, we're about to find out his name is Varn. Calling Draal, and apparently they get a little more information than just help me because they know enough to find Draal in the med lab.
Yeah.
They're able to confirm that the whole planet is one big booby trap.
Yeah. And unless another is found, the planet is going to blow up. Another. Yeah, another. And so my question is, another what? Well, of course, we know it's another being to take over.
Uh-huh.
You think maybe the handwriting was on the wall here and everybody kind of figured it was going to be Draal, not just because he was a guest star on the show, but also Draal was looking for some purpose. He had lost his purpose on Minbar, was ready to go out wandering amongst the stars, and here's his purpose.
Yeah, basically it's his wish.
Yeah.
Fulfilled. I think as a viewer, yeah, it's the writings on the writings on the wall. If not at this point, at least at the point when Londo joins up with him. So
yeah.
we'll defer for that moment there.
Right.
As far as booby traps are concerned, we get back to I like JP's word, reckless.
Yes.
Pierce doesn't care. He figured out Sinclair's earlier bluff about needing a transponder code to land on the planet, and he's getting ready to send another detachment down.
Oh, boy.
Do you guys think he appreciates the problem on the planet? Does he understand what's about to happen?
He was never informed. As far as I know, he was not informed as to the situation.
I'm not sure if, especially in light of our previous conversation about a possible Clark connection, the question becomes, does he care? Is he willing to take the risk?
Right. And in that sense, it may not matter. It doesn't matter what he really knows. He could be, depending on how far upstream you want to place the plot, the intent, or what have you. Pierce himself could be expendable, along with Babylon 5. Because destroying whatever is there keeps it out of alien hands as well.
With Clark having already thrown himself in with shadows at this point, we know that from further down. Mm-hmm. He's certainly going to consider anything expendable to keep the technology out. So I think you're on the right track there.
So if I don't get it, nobody else does.
But Pierce does eventually stand down because it's real clear Sinclair is not bluffing about firing on him.
Right.
Okay.
That's another question for you, JP. Under any circumstances, could something like that happen in the military without some sort of repercussion?
If it's inside of what I'll loosely call the rules of engagement, and we don't know this, but it seems to be appropriate in the show that Sinclair could make that kind of a threat to enforce his orders. It's extreme, but I don't know that it's wrong. It certainly works in the story.
Yeah.
And, you kind of get the hint that there might be some repercussions that do take place because Pierce is kind of like a dog with his tail between his legs at the end.
Well, that would be a very grim decision for a commander to have to make.
He's going to kill a colleague and all the people on that ship to presumably enable a greater good, which is preventing the loss of the planet, the station, and all of the diplomatic stuff that the show is based upon, the last best hope. So with Babylon 5 gone, I may shoot this ship out of the sky and I may suffer real consequences from that. But Babylon 5 endures, the mission of the station endures, which is, pan species. It's galactic, intergalactic.
Right. Well, not only would Sinclair suffer probably, I'll tell you what, he may be vindicated for doing what he did legally. However, his name would be dirt as far as any fellow commanders and officers are concerned. Nobody would want anything to do with it.
Just like you see with court cases that get publicized and whatnot, the second guessing would go on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think we're seeing a little foreshadow. Now I'm convinced with what I'm about to say that, there's a unspoken Clark connection because there is some definite foreshadowing here where Earth Force firing on Earth Force is concerned.
Yeah.
Thanks, Season 3.
Yeah. So more company arrives.
And they sure learned English pretty quick.
Yeah, Varn's people. They charged through the jump gate, or did they come through their own jump point? I don't remember, but...
Now they're claiming the planet, though.
Yeah, they scan both the station and the Hyperion, learn English rapidly, and declare that you have 10 hours to get out of the area or else.
And it seems that the or else is Varn's people have 9 hours to get out of the area.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I think Susan says it well.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's testosterone poisoning. Here's the quote.
We will give you 10 of your hours to move aside. We do not wish to kill, but we will if you will not let us take what is ours.
Open channel to...
This is the Earth Alliance cruiser Hyperion to Intruder. This sector is under Earth jurisdiction. Any attempt to seize this planet by force or to launch an attack will be met with deadly force. You have 9 hours in which to withdraw.
Worst case of testosterone poisoning I've ever seen.
Is it true this world...
Pierce has just gone way out into the middle of the twilight zone here as far as I'm concerned. He steps in before Sinclair even keys up a microphone and starts laying down ultimatums.
Yeah. He's doing this in what would strike me as clearly being a diplomatic role.
Yeah, because this is a first contact situation.
It's like the guy is going rogue.
Yeah.
I don't know. But they do question Varn about these people.
Right.
And we find out that they're actually outcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's there with the machine waiting for something. That the machine, I think, as he put it, was not for this time.
Right.
Hint on the word time, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, just as an aside, if you look at Straczynski's notes on this, one of the things, I'll go ahead and quote him directly. Of course, insofar as I recall, it wasn't stated in the episode that Varn's people actually built the great machine. Mm-hmm. After all, if they could build it, why would the others have been searching for it so frantically over the last several hundred years?
Yeah, and I remember reading that. Along with that, so if Varn did not intend to contact his own people to come to the planet, why did a homing signal get sent out from the planet in the first place? Who was it intended for?
Well, we're going to have to wait a couple of seasons for that.
Uh-huh.
Do you think you can be patient?
I can try. Of course, I got the DVDs here. I can figure it out anytime.
Yeah, okay, you can just plug... Oh, gosh. For those who haven't looked ahead, when it comes to discussing some of the intricacies of the plot, we might spoil, but when it's something that's just so fun, we're not going to spoil that. But we do get some more information on Varn, and it's... Yes, he's old, he's dying, and the machine needs to be kept by a new guardian.
Right.
So apparently Draal and Sinclair are sort of on the same wavelength where that's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
At least as far as connection with Varn and who might be an appropriate guardian. And I guess apparently so is Londo, because he shows up.
Yeah. How does he know to show up?
Well, Draal seems to have been calling him as well.
Yeah.
And I really like the interchange there when Londo comes into the discussion. Mm-hmm. Because, up to this point, for the most part, Londo has been portrayed more or less as, I guess, a clown, a buffoon at points.
Oh, yeah.
But we see some hints of the kind of greatness, and in particular for his case, a tragic greatness that the character has, and that's going to develop as the series progresses.
Yeah. Well, he definitely becomes more respectable as time goes on.
Yep. Back on the bridge, Sinclair is agreeing that with Pierce that, yeah, if there is a need, he'll participate in a joint attack.
Yeah. Well, we have a common enemy now.
But what's interesting here is where the story has gone from Sinclair sort of carrying the story for the first, from part one to this point. The real weight of the story kind of now shifts to Londo and Draal and Delenn with Varn. Mm-hmm. And we get a feeling of why it was Londo, Sinclair, and Draal that were contacted by Varn.
Mm-hmm.
The claim is that they are the ones that are the most familiar with the third law of sentience.
Right.
And Londo knows, actually, that monologue by Londo is fantastic. Let's go ahead and play that for them.
Yes, he called to me as well. Appeared to me out of nowhere.
Strange. I wonder why he appeared just to you, Draal, and the commander.
Perhaps because we are most familiar with the third principle of sentient life. You can be of great service, Ambassador, if you are willing to dare greatly.
You're talking to the Centauri who led the raid on Phallus 12. Granted, it was a long time ago. But perhaps it is time to return to old habits.
Ambassador, I don't think you fully understand what Draal is asking of you.
Of course I do. One of us will not return. Yes?
That much is certain.
As a young and foolish Centauri, I swore that I would die on my feet, doing something noble and brave and futile. Perhaps it was not so wild a dream as I thought, or as foolish. It is better than waiting for the inevitable. We will go together.
Now, I've got a question for you guys. Remember what the third law of sentience is?
Yes.
The capacity for self-sacrifice.
Right.
Clearly, we can see why Sinclair would be familiar with it and why Varn might be contacting him.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise with Draal. Why in the world would Londo, of all people, be considered in that group?
JP, have an idea on that?
I don't. Other than foreshadowing.
Yeah, immense foreshadowing to season 5.
And being the guests here, I'm going to defer to you guys on. I know you said we're spoiler friendly, but
if you've got a good thought, throw it in, please. Go for it.
You know, as we head toward the last couple seasons, we see. I'm struggling with when things were said. There may have already been some setup in season 1, but I think it's in season 2 where Londo and his aide, Veer, have an interesting discussion, a foretelling of the future, revolving around one of Londo's wives, as I recall, visiting. Was that in this season, or was that season 2 or 3? Anyway, Londo.
There's a few points where that discussion comes up, actually, throughout the season. So a little of both.
Not that we're not to drag the Narn into this right now, but I will. Londo and Jakar are my two favorite characters to watch as the series unfolds, because my impression of them, my appreciation for them, or my dislike, all of the facets of those characters dramatically changes from season 1 to the last season. And
oh yeah, they show a lot of growth.
And Londo is going to sacrifice.
Yeah. In fact, JP, one way I have seen this show described almost is the story that, or actually a better way of putting it, is the tragedy of Londo Mollari.
Right.
There's a reason he's doing the voiceover at the pilot, in the gathering for the introduction.
Oh, that makes sense.
But this is some great, and I don't want to make more of Londo's involvement in this, or potentially what it is, but this is some great storytelling. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you're making too much of it. I don't think you're making too much of it at all.
No, I don't either, because you've opened up some new things for me to think about. Because as far as I figured, Draal and Delenn needed a way to get down to the planet, and Londo has a transport. He has a shuttle that would do it, knowing that none of the humans would do it, and Londo is looking to be a hero here and recall some of that past glory that he had. So by helping Delenn and Draal out, I don't see it as much of a sacrifice on his part as going home again.
Right.
Yep. So they're heading to the planet.
Yeah.
And the aliens aren't happy.
No.
Yeah, they kind of notice that bright purple almost immediately.
Yeah, you can't miss that. Supposedly you don't know who it is that's headed down there because they never really said that Londo was going to take them down, I don't think. But that purple shuttle comes out, and okay, here we go. Here's Londo.
And he's flying like a madman.
Flying like a madman. So
I've just got one question.
Mm-hmm.
Why in the hell, pardon me, is Garibaldi following on his own without orders?
I don't know.
Knowing that the bloody planet's a booby trap. Sorry, Jim. I'm with you now. He should be court-martialed.
Yeah. Now, I don't think so. I think Sinclair has enough trust in Garibaldi's instincts that he wouldn't do something like that. He might reprimand him, but that isn't even going to happen. But the thing of it is this entire episode, start to finish, seems to revolve around the theme of there's nothing to lose here. We might as well do this because we have nothing to lose. Garibaldi goes, he has nothing to lose. Londo takes Draal and Delenn down to the planet, he has nothing to lose. Varn is dying, might as well let the planet blow up. He has nothing to lose. Nobody has anything to lose here.
Varn's concern is preserving the planet, though. He does at least have something to lose.
Yeah,
He's
but
got a mission.
If that doesn't happen, boom, 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 boom.
Well, we do find out at least why Mike was following.
Yeah.
He's there to be the object of the exposition.
Right.
Storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
The everyman that Delenn and Varn and Londo explain what's going on with the planet.
Yeah. Was that scene really cool where they were walking across that footbridge or what?
Crow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were digital characters.
Oh yeah.
Doing the walking.
There was no doubt about that. And I know
people will complain. Yeah, but I know people might complain about the cartoonishness of it.
Yeah.
But at that time, especially on standard def TV like it was broadcast, was just absolutely amazing.
Oh,
they blew the budget on the graphics.
I thought it was neat. I thought it was neat just the way they did it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
So, as you say, Draal is going to take Varn's place. Mm-hmm. He's found, as the Mambari like to put it, the calling of his heart.
Yeah.
While the battle rages.
Yeah. Yep. Overhead, we've got still fighting and shooting and all that good stuff going on.
Boom, boom, boom.
More boom, boom. Yeah.
Yep. Draal kind of takes issue with that. He pretty much just stops the war.
Yeah.
Everyone's systems go dead.
Right.
And he warns everyone to stay away until the time is right. And he places Babylon 5 pretty much in charge of keeping the place safe.
Yeah. Well, he might as well. It's there already.
But now it's there with the owners of the place's blessing.
Yeah.
And we certainly, I had, how do I put it? I had called Pierce reckless, stubborn. Forget it. Compared to Varn's outcast people, he's reasonable. I mean, those guys obviously had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Did it strike you as unusual of how Varn had a very miraculous recovery here?
He did seem to improve once he got back where he,
Yeah.
Franklin did say he had him stabilized.
Oh, stabilized. So, for crying out loud, the guy must have some awesome recuperative powers.
Also, bear in mind, he notes that he's just got a few days left.
Right. Hey, maybe he can channel some energy or something. Yep. So Earth Alliance confirms Sinclair's jurisdiction.
A little late.
Yeah, a little late.
But it does make clear that Sinclair does have the final authority here.
Which, as JP's pointed out, is exactly correct.
And that does make everything... JP, thanks for your input along that, because things do make a lot, for me at least, make a little more sense now.
Yeah.
And we do wrap up the Mars situation. Apparently, Lisa's married and about to have a baby.
Yeah. And if Garibaldi wasn't a mess before, he sure is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is they've put a lot of effort here in about 2/3 of the way through season 1 to lay the pieces of a thread that really won't get picked up until seasons 4 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clearly planned out as far as the direction that he wants to go with it.
Yeah.
And I think that just totally rocks.
Well, yeah, and where Lise comes back in later on is, for me anyway, when I saw it, was totally out of left field. I expected that, okay, well, this storyline is done. Garibaldi's going to move on, and we don't see Lise anymore. And down the road, we get her back,
Right. There's one piece that I found rather interesting at the end.
Yeah.
In the conversation with Mike, Delenn makes a comment that if Sinclair had gone down, he'd be in the machine right now, and that he has a different destiny.
Well, and that harkens back once again to the third rule of sentient life.
Self-sacrifice.
Right. Do you think Sinclair would have sacrificed himself and become the machine's core?
I think he probably would have. When you look at his seeking something, clearly, it's come up already a few times that he is a seeker, but Delenn has said that herself.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point. Do you,
And it's true.
Do you guys think at all here that Sinclair is somewhat of a Christ-like figure?
I hadn't really thought of it that way.
I think he's more of a Mosaic figure in some ways.
Thinking about where he goes in the later seasons?
Where he goes and what he does, I'm thinking more Moses than Christ.
Oh, okay.
Now, when we get to Sheridan, absolutely it's a Christ-like figure.
Yeah.
But I think Sinclair is more of the lead my people home.
Well, see, I think
in context of his future.
I think the reason I was thinking that is because Sinclair in this series is a lot like Charlton Heston was in every movie he ever played.
But
But
didn't he play Moses?
Well, yeah, he played Moses.
I rest my case.
And he played a Christ-like character in Soylent Green.
True.
And in other movies, Planet of the Apes. Oh, what was that military movie? Fall In Behind the Major. They kept singing over and over again.
Guns of Navarone?
No. Charlton.
No, that was Walter Pidgeon.
I'll tell you what, as soon as we sign off, I'll figure it out. But at any rate, Charlton Heston's characters and Sinclair seem to mesh.
But in this case, Sinclair becomes, I guess the best way to describe it is the lawgiver.
Yeah.
For the Mambari people. I will say this, Mike is right, and this is more or less what they close on. Some things are better left buried.
Yeah. And that may sum up the whole thing right there.
Yep.
Leave the planet buried, leave Lise buried, leave everything else, and just try to move on.
Leave it alone. Yeah. Just leave it alone.
Yep.
Oh, wow. I am looking at the time, Jim, and I think we have talked this thing out.
I believe so. So, JP, you have anything to add here?
Are you still with us?
Thank you for having me. This has been a great time.
I sure hope you've enjoyed yourself, because I know we've definitely enjoyed having you with us.
Yeah. We're going to have you back if that's okay.
I'm okay with it if you are.
I certainly am.
Yeah.
Friends out there listening, we definitely want your thoughts. Not just about the show, but if you have anything to add in to the discussion in general, foreshadowing JP's comments, did that help you understand some of the military structure? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And not only that, we would really like to put together a listener feedback show. We've gotten some, but it would be kind of nice to have about a half hour's worth of coming from you, something to talk about.
Absolutely right, Jim, there.
Yeah.
Oh, so folks, any last words?
Nothing here.
Crickets.
Cue the crickets. Okay.
Well, in that case, let's go ahead and take her out, Jim.
All right.
No boom today?
JP,
Boom.
was there any boom today?
We were close to a boom today.
Darn, no boom today.
There's always a boom tomorrow.
Tomorrow we can look
Amen
forward to the
that,
boom.
my friends.
Good night now.
Good night, everybody.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.